Have you ever considered the true measure of a person's worth? Is it the grand title they hold, the gleaming car they drive, or the designer clothes that drape their frame? Or could it be something far more profound, something whispered in the quiet dignity of their actions, something woven into the fabric of their character, often overlooked by a world too busy chasing the superficial? Imagine a Sunday afternoon, the kind of vibrant, sun-drenched day that usually feels full of promise, but for Alara, it was about to cast a long, cold shadow. The air in her parents' lavish dining room hummed with the clinking of silverware and the cacophony of cheerful family chatter, a stark contrast to the quiet, almost invisible life Alara lived. She sat at the edge of the long, polished mahogany table, a ghost in her own family's feast, her simple dress a muted tone amidst the vibrant silks and sharp suits. Her older brother, Liam, a man who seemed to embody every aspiration of success and material wealth, held court at the head of the table. He was a whirlwind of booming laughter, grand pronouncements, and polished charm, his fiancée, Chloe, a vision of refined elegance, clinging to his arm. Liam was in his element, regaling the family with the intricate, extravagant details of their upcoming wedding, a sprawling affair planned for a prestigious country club, with a guest list that read like a who's who of their city's elite. He spoke of bespoke gowns, a renowned chef, and a floral budget that could fund Alara's entire year. "And what about you, Alara?" Liam's voice cut through the air, sharp and laced with a condescending amusement, silencing the room. All eyes, now heavy with a mixture of pity and polite curiosity, turned to Alara. She felt the familiar flush creep up her neck, her hands instinctively smoothing the fabric of her simple dress. "Still slinging hash at the daily grind, are we?" he continued, a smirk playing on his lips, as if the very mention of her workplace was a punchline. He made it sound like a back alley dive, not the bustling, beloved diner it actually was. "I mean, it's honest work, I suppose." Chloe interjected quickly, a faint attempt at diplomacy, though her tone was still tinged with polite disdain. Liam chuckled, a dry, dismissive sound. "Honest, yes. But hardly glamorous, is it? We're talking about a wedding that's going to be in all the social columns, Alara. Not exactly a place for, well, for someone who spends their days wiping down counters and pouring coffee, is it?" His gaze swept over her, a dismissive flick of his wrist. Ilara felt the weight of his words, each one a stone dropped into the quiet pool of her self-respect. Her jaw tightened, but she kept her eyes fixed on her plate, on the untouched roast beef before her. She had long ago learned that defending herself against Liam was a futile exercise, a battle of dignity against derision she could never win. She was simply Ilara, the quiet sister, the one who worked the early shifts, the one who never asked for anything, the one whose dreams were as modest as her earnings. She cleaned, she served, she listened. She was a silent observer in a loud world, and today, she was the family's gentle mockery. Yet, beneath Alara's unassuming exterior, behind her quiet eyes, lay a depth of character that no one in that room, least of all Liam, could perceive. She saw things others missed, felt things others ignored. She possessed a quiet strength, a resilience forged in countless hours of unseen labor and silent judgment. She understood the true value of a dollar earned, the quiet dignity of service, and the profound difference a simple act of kindness could make. Liam, lost in his grand illusions, saw only the diner uniform, the lack of status. He failed to see the keen intelligence, the unwavering empathy, the sheer, untarnished goodness that resided within his own sister. He did not know that the world, in its infinite wisdom, often hides its purest gold in the most unlikely of places, and sometimes the quietest hearts beat with the loudest purpose. And Ilara, true to her nature, offered no retort, no defense. She simply breathed, existing, waiting for the conversation to move on, unaware that the seeds of an unimaginable reversal had already been sown, not by grand gestures, but by the smallest, most unassuming acts of her own unwavering kindness, acts that would soon redefine what true value meant, not just for her, but for the very brother who now so carelessly dismissed her. The clinking of the cutlery resumed, the laughter bubbled back to life, and Alara, once again, faded into the background, a silent testament to a truth none of them yet comprehended. Part 2. Life at the daily grind was a world away from the gilded cages of her family's social circle, and Alara found a strange comfort in its honest grit. Each morning, the diner awoke with the first whispers of dawn, the scent of brewing coffee and sizzling bacon, a familiar symphony to Alara's senses. She moved through the cramped aisles with practiced grace, a phantom of efficiency, her hands wiping down counters, refilling sugar dispensers, and pouring endless cups of steaming black coffee. Most customers barely registered her presence beyond the transaction. She was part of the background hum, an extension of the diner's machinery. But Alara saw them all. She saw the tired construction workers grabbing their first meal, the harried parents trying to wrangle their children, the lonely elderly folk nursing a single cup for hours. She saw their humanity, their struggles, their quiet joys. She believed that every person who walked through the diner's swinging doors deserved the same courtesy, the same respect, the same genuine smile. This unwavering belief was a cornerstone of her character, a quiet virtue that permeated her every interaction. Among the mosaic of regulars, there was one man who stood out, not for his loudness or his demands, but for his profound quietness. He was an older gentleman, perhaps in his late 60s or early 70s, with a shock of silver hair that was often unkempt, and deep-set eyes that held a lifetime of untold stories. He wore clothes that were perpetually rumpled, sometimes a threadbare jacket, other times a faded, but once expensive, sweater. He would slip into the same booth near the window every Tuesday and Thursday morning, ordering the exact same thing: a black coffee, no sugar, and a single toasted plain bagel with cream cheese on the side. Other waitstaff often ignored him, seeing him as just another face, sometimes even a bother, given his quiet nature and small order that didn't promise a large tip. They'd rush past, grunting a perfunctory coffee, before hurrying to more boisterous tables, but Alara was different. From the very first time she served him, she treated him with an attentiveness that bordered on reverence. She would bring his coffee precisely how he liked it, the exact shade of black, the right temperature. She remembered his bagel order without needing to ask. She noticed the slight tremor in his hand as he reached for the sugar caddy, the almost imperceptible sigh he let out after his first sip of coffee. One particularly cold morning she noticed he seemed to shiver slightly, his worn jacket doing little to ward off the chill. Without a word, she returned to his table a few minutes later with an extra, freshly baked biscuit, still warm from the oven, on a small plate. "Compliments of the house, sir," she said, her voice soft, her eyes meeting his. "Just thought you might like something warm." His eyes, usually distant, softened then, a flicker of surprise and genuine gratitude passing through them. "That's very kind of you, young lady," he murmured, his voice raspy, yet with an unexpected depth. He took the biscuit, his fingers trembling slightly as he broke it open. Alara simply smiled, a genuine, unforced expression of care. She didn't linger for praise or recognition. She simply moved on to the next task, attending to another customer. She didn't know his name, and he didn't know hers. Their connection was purely one of quiet service and profound respect. She observed him, day after day, week after week. She noticed that sometimes he carried a tattered old briefcase, and other times he seemed utterly unburdened. She saw the wisdom in his gaze, the quiet intelligence that sometimes shone through the weariness. She never pried, never asked personal questions. She simply offered consistent kindness, a steady anchor in his seemingly solitary routine. She believed that everyone had a story, and it wasn't her place to extract it, but merely to offer a brief moment of comfort and recognition in their day. There's dignity in every job, if you do it with a good heart, she often mused to herself, polishing a counter until it gleamed. And true wealth isn't measured in what you have, but in how you treat others, especially those who can give you nothing in return. This was Alara's mantra, her silent creed. It guided her through the long shifts, the thankless tasks, and the casual dismissals of people like her brother. She didn't know that the silver-haired man, Mr. Thorne, was not just an ordinary customer. She didn't know that his disheveled appearance was, at times, a deliberate test, a quiet experiment to observe human nature in its purest form. She didn't know that he was one of the wealthiest, most influential philanthropists in the country, a man who had grown tired of the superficiality of his world, a man who was quietly searching for genuine character, for someone truly worthy of immense trust and responsibility. And in Alara, the unassuming waitress from the daily grind, he had found his quiet, shining gem. Every kind word, every thoughtful gesture, every unnoticed act of service was being meticulously noted, creating a tapestry of integrity that would soon change her life, and surprisingly, the life of her brother Liam, in ways neither of them could ever foresee. The gentle clinking of coffee cups and the murmur of morning conversations continued, oblivious to the silent, profound shift occurring beneath the surface. Part 3. Months rolled by, each day at the daily grind blurring into the next for Alara, marked only by the shifting seasons and the unchanging routine of her work. But in Liam's world, time moved with a frantic urgency, driven by the relentless ticking clock of his grand wedding plans. The initial euphoria of his opulent vision had slowly begun to curdle into a bitter stew of anxiety and mounting panic. He had envisioned a wedding that would be the talk of the town for years, a testament to his boundless ambition and burgeoning success. The country club was booked, the celebrity DJ secured. Chloe's bespoke gown was being flown in from Paris. A culinary team from New York had been contracted to create a six-course masterpiece. Every detail screamed extravagance, a direct reflection of Liam's desire for status and recognition. However, the foundations of his lavish plans were built on sand. A major business deal, one he had staked everything upon, had fallen through, collapsing like a house of cards. A significant investor, who had promised a large sum, had unexpectedly pulled out, leaving a gaping chasm in Liam's carefully constructed financial facade. The numbers simply didn't add up anymore. The dream wedding, once a source of immense pride, was rapidly becoming a financial nightmare. Liam, usually so composed, so outwardly confident, felt his polished exterior cracking under the immense pressure. He paced his luxurious apartment late into the night, his jaw tight, his eyes haunted by sleeplessness. The carefully curated image of success he projected was fraying at the edges, revealing the raw fear beneath. Chloe, sensing his escalating distress, grew increasingly worried. She tried to offer solutions, to suggest scaling back, but Liam, trapped by his own pride, vehemently refused. To downsize the wedding now would be an admission of failure, a public humiliation he simply could not bear. His ego was intricately tied to the scale of this event. Desperate, Liam began making frantic calls, his voice strained and hoarse. He called his wealthy friends, implying business opportunities rather than outright begging for loans. He called his parents, using veiled hints about temporary liquidity issues, hoping they would offer a bailout. He even reached out to distant, affluent relatives he hadn't spoken to in years, trying to leverage old connections. But the responses were uniformly polite, regretful, and ultimately, unhelpful. His friends, while successful, were not keen on bailing out a multi-million-dollar wedding. His parents, already stretched by their own lifestyle, simply didn't have the vast sums Liam needed. The distant relatives offered platitudes and well wishes, but no financial assistance. Each refusal was a fresh stab, a painful reminder of his isolated struggle. The truth was, Many of them had always seen through Liam's carefully constructed facade, recognizing the inherent shallowness beneath the glitter. They admired his ambition, but they also understood his recklessness. The dream was crumbling, leaving him with an insurmountable mountain of debt and the terrifying prospect of public shame. The wedding was now just weeks away, and the final payments for the venue, the caterers, the designers, loomed like an executioner's axe. Liam felt the cold dread seep into his bones. He knew, with a sickening certainty, that he was utterly, completely stuck. He was humiliated, not in the bustling public arena of a family brunch, but in the desolate, private confines of his own increasingly desperate mind. The man who had mocked his sister's humble work now found himself facing a professional and personal catastrophe that threatened to unravel his entire meticulously crafted life. He had spent so long building a tower of material success, only to discover it was fundamentally unstable. The irony, though completely lost on him at the time, was a bitter one. The very values he had so dismissively cast aside, humility, integrity, quiet, hard work, were the ones he now desperately lacked, and the ones that might have saved him from this precipice. He wished, silently, for a miracle, for some anonymous benefactor to swoop in and rescue him from the brink. He had no idea that the quiet, unassuming grace he had once scorned would become the unlikely conduit for that very miracle, a profound act of silent generosity emanating from a source he would never, in his wildest dreams, suspect. The weight of his impending failure pressed down on him, suffocating his once boundless optimism, reducing him to a frantic, cornered man, utterly unaware that the seeds of his salvation, sown months ago through simple kindness, were about to blossom in the most unexpected way. Part 4. As the weeks bled into months, Mr. Thorne remained a steadfast fixture at the daily grind. His presence, once simply a quiet routine, had deepened into a deliberate, almost meditative act of observation. He wasn't just a customer, he was an analyst of human nature, a connoisseur of character, and Alara had become his most compelling study. He had seen countless people in positions of power, individuals who commanded respect through their wealth or their titles. But he rarely encountered true integrity, genuine kindness extended without expectation of return. Alara, in her simple uniform, embodying quiet service, was a revelation. He observed her interactions not just with him, but with every person who crossed her path. He noted her patience with demanding customers, her gentle way with children, her empathy for those struggling to make ends meet. He saw her unwavering smile, even on days when the diner was chaotic, or when she looked particularly tired. He noted her efficiency, the way she anticipated needs before they were voiced, the way she made every customer, no matter how insignificant, feel momentarily seen. He'd seen other staff members dismiss him, their eyes glazing over his rumpled clothes, their minds undoubtedly calculating the meager tip he might leave, but Alara never faltered. Her respect was unconditional, freely given. She embodied the very values he championed in his own philanthropic endeavors: dignity, compassion, and the profound belief in the inherent worth of every individual, regardless of their station. On one particular morning, as Alara refilled his coffee, Mr. Thorne ventured a question, his voice a low, gravelly hum. "You always seem to be in such good spirits, young lady," he began, his keen eyes searching her face. "Do you have a large family nearby?" Alara paused, a small smile playing on her lips. "I do, sir," she replied, her voice soft. She didn't elaborate, didn't complain about Liam's dismissiveness or her family's judgmental attitudes. She simply acknowledged their existence, her loyalty to them unshaken, even if unappreciated. "They're good people," she added, an almost imperceptible sigh escaping her lips. "Just busy with their own lives." He nodded slowly, understanding the unspoken nuance. "And what about your own aspirations, Alara?" he continued, using her name for the first time, a subtle shift in their dynamic. "Do you see yourself working here forever?" Elara looked out the window, her gaze lost for a moment in the bustling city street. "I believe in doing good work, sir," she said, turning back to him, her eyes clear and earnest. "Wherever I am, whatever I do, I want to feel that I'm making a difference, even a small one. It's not about the place, but about how you serve, how you treat people. This diner, it's taught me a lot about humanity." Her words resonated deeply within Mr. Thorne. She didn't speak of grand career ambitions or material wealth, but of purpose and contribution. This was precisely the kind of character he had been searching for. He had spent years interviewing executives, vetting charity leaders, and investing in ventures, only to be repeatedly disappointed by the self-interest and hidden agendas that so often drove those in power. In Elara, he saw someone untainted by such motives, someone driven by an intrinsic moral compass. He saw a natural leader, not of companies or boardrooms, but of people, guided by an unwavering sense of right. He began to subtly test her further. He would occasionally leave an anonymous, yet significant tip, observing if her demeanor changed, if she became less focused on her other duties. It never did. He once accidentally left an important document on his table, only for Elara to immediately and meticulously return it to him, her face full of concern. He saw her interact with the diner manager, humbly accepting instructions, but also quietly offering solutions when problems arose. Mr. Thorne had built an empire not just on astute business acumen, but on his uncanny ability to discern genuine character. He believed that true talent wasn't always loud or flashy. Sometimes it was quiet, diligent, and hidden in plain sight. He had observed enough, he was convinced. He had found his true gold, not in the gleaming towers of finance, but in the humble setting of the daily grind, polishing counters and serving coffee. He knew that the time had come to reveal himself, to offer Elara not just a different job, but a profound opportunity to apply her extraordinary character on a scale she could never have imagined, an opportunity that would inadvertently ripple out and touch the lives of those who had once underestimated her most profoundly. The quiet hum of the diner continued, a backdrop to the silent, momentous decision that Mr. Thorne had now irrevocably made. Part 5. The discreet summons arrived not on a crisp, official letterhead, but on a simple, elegant card delivered by a courier to the daily grind. It bore only an address and a time, with a handwritten note that simply said, "For Elara, from a friend." Elara felt a tremor of curiosity, followed by a faint apprehension. She had no friends who communicated in such a manner. Yet, something in the elegant simplicity of the card and the quiet dignity of the courier urged her to attend. She dressed in her best, albeit simple, clothes for the meeting, her heart thrumming with a mixture of nerves and a strange sense of destiny. The address led her to a quiet, unassuming building nestled discreetly among the grander corporate towers of the city. Inside, the atmosphere was one of hushed elegance, a stark contrast to the clatter of the diner. She was led into a spacious, sunlit office, adorned with tasteful art and quiet luxury. And there, behind a large, antique desk, sat Mr. Thorne, no longer in his rumpled clothes, but impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his silver hair neatly combed, his eyes sharp and commanding. Elara's breath hitched. "Mr. Thorne?" she whispered, her voice barely audible, surprise warring with a dawning understanding. He rose, a warm smile gracing his lips. "Elara," he said, his voice deeper, more resonant than she had ever heard it. "Please, sit." He motioned to a comfortable leather chair opposite him. "I imagine you have many questions." He leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. "My name is Arthur Thorne. For many years I have been, among other things, the founder of the Thorne Foundation, a philanthropic organization dedicated to impactful social change." Elara felt her world tilt on its axis. Arthur Thorne. The name was synonymous with immense wealth, ethical business practices, and quiet, powerful influence in the city. He was a legend. and he had been her quiet diner customer. "I have spent the last few months," he continued, his voice calm, "observing you, Alara. Not as a customer, but as someone searching for a rare quality. I've met many brilliant minds, many driven individuals, but very few with true, unshakable integrity, genuine empathy, and the quiet strength to simply do what is right, without fanfare or expectation." He paused, his gaze softening. "You possess that quality, Ilara, in abundance. I've witnessed your quiet diligence, your unwavering kindness, your ability to see the worth in every person, regardless of their circumstance. You don't just serve coffee, you serve humanity." He explained how his disheveled appearances were often a test, how he'd sent out feelers to various organizations for potential candidates, only to be met with superficiality. "I've been looking for someone to lead a new, critical initiative within my foundation," he stated, his voice firm with conviction. "A project that requires not just sharp intelligence, but profound compassion and an innate understanding of human dignity. Someone I can trust implicitly, someone whose judgment I can rely upon, someone who genuinely cares." Ilara listened, mesmerized, her mind struggling to reconcile the gentleman in booth 7 with the titan of industry before her. "Ilara," he said, his voice dropping slightly, "I am offering you a position that goes far beyond managing a program. I am offering you a partnership. A chance to truly make a difference, to bring your unique perspective and your extraordinary character to bear on complex challenges, on a scale that can impact thousands of lives. I believe in your potential, Alara. I believe you are true gold." Alara felt a lump form in her throat. For so long she had been dismissed, overlooked, relegated to the margins. Now, this powerful, discerning man was not just seeing her, but valuing her, recognizing the very essence of her being. The offer was staggering, almost unbelievable. It wasn't just a job, it was an affirmation of her intrinsic worth, a validation she had never dared to dream of. Tears pricked at her eyes, not of sadness, but of profound relief and gratitude. "Mr. Thorne," she managed, her voice thick with emotion, I don't know what to say." "Say yes, Alara," he replied, a gentle smile spreading across his face. "Say yes, and let us begin to do some good in this world." In that moment, surrounded by the quiet luxury of Arthur Thorne's office, Alara understood that her life was about to change irrevocably. She had been found, not by chasing recognition, but by simply being herself, by extending kindness where it was least expected, by embodying values that the world often overlooked. And in the quiet power of that realization, Alara found her voice, a voice that would soon resonate with purpose, even as her actions remained, for a time, a silent, powerful secret. Part 6. While Alara was quietly stepping into a new, transformative chapter of her life, Liam's world was dramatically imploding. The frantic calls, the desperate pleas, the dwindling hope, it all culminated in a catastrophic declaration. His lavish wedding, the pinnacle of his meticulously crafted image, was officially cancelled. The news ripped through the family like a cruel gust of wind, scattering their meticulously cultivated facade of prosperity. Liam, stripped bare of his carefully constructed confidence, was utterly devastated. He closeted himself in his apartment, refusing to answer calls, his pride shattered into a million irreparable pieces. Chloe, though sympathetic, was also deeply disappointed, her own dreams of a fairy tale wedding evaporating into thin air. The family, initially sympathetic, quickly turned to mortified embarrassment. The whispers started. What happened? How could Liam, the golden boy, have let this happen? The shame, for Liam, was almost unbearable. He had promised the world, and now he couldn't even deliver a wedding. He had, for the first time in his life, hit rock bottom, stripped of his bravado, and left with only the bitter taste of failure. Then, Just as the family was preparing to issue a humiliating public statement, just as the deposit for the country club was about to be forfeited, a miracle occurred. A solution, as unexpected as it was grand, materialized out of thin air. An anonymous benefactor, someone no one had ever heard of, stepped forward. The offer was breathtaking in its scope. Not only would they cover all remaining wedding costs, no questions asked, but they would even elevate the plans, ensuring the event surpassed its original extravagant vision. The family was thrown into a whirlwind of shock, disbelief, and then overwhelming elation. The cancellation was reversed. The country club was rebooked. The Parisian gown was secured. The culinary team re-engaged. Everything and more was back on track. A wave of relief, so profound it was almost palpable, washed over Liam. He was saved, miraculously rescued from the precipice of public shame. But who was this mysterious savior? Liam, driven by a mixture of gratitude and an insatiable curiosity, immediately tried to uncover the identity of his rescuer. He contacted the wedding planner, the venue manager, anyone who might have a lead. He was given only the contact information for a low-level assistant, who politely but firmly refused to divulge any details, citing strict confidentiality agreements. "The benefactor wishes to remain completely anonymous, Mr. Hayes," the assistant had stated in a calm, unyielding voice. "Their only request is that the wedding proceeds as planned, without further stress." The anonymity only fueled the family's speculation. Who could it be? A distant, eccentric relative? A secret admirer? A grateful business associate from Liam's past, repaying an unseen favor? Wild theories circulated at family dinners, each one more elaborate than the last. They praised the mystery person's boundless generosity, their incredible benevolence. An angel, truly. Liam's mother exclaimed, wiping away tears of relief. Someone with a heart of gold. Liam, though profoundly grateful, felt a strange unease. He was saved, but by an unseen hand, a hand he could not shake, a face he could not thank. He was used to being in control, to being the one who orchestrated his own success. This anonymous intervention left him feeling strangely diminished, beholden to an unknown force. He had no idea that the angel they spoke of, the heart of gold, was quietly observing their relief from a vantage point they would never suspect. The dramatic irony hung heavy in the air, thick enough to touch, yet completely invisible to Liam and his family. The person who had silently orchestrated this salvation, the one who held the key to this grand mystery, was the very person Liam had publicly belittled just months prior, the one he considered insignificant, the one who worked the humble shifts at the daily grind. As Liam basked in the reflected glory of his renewed wedding plans, completely unaware of the truth, Alara continued her work with Arthur Thorne, growing in confidence and purpose. She knew the secret, held it close to her heart, a silent testament to her unwavering character and the profound power of quiet, selfless generosity. The stage was set for the grand unveiling, not of a person, but of a truth, a revelation that would forever alter the dynamics within their family, even if the source of the miracle remained unspoken. Part 7. Ilara's transformation under Arthur Thorne's mentorship was swift and profound. The quiet diligence she had honed at the daily grind seamlessly translated into her new role. She absorbed information like a sponge. Her innate organizational skills, coupled with her deep empathy, proved invaluable in managing complex charitable projects. She wasn't just processing paperwork, she was connecting with people, understanding needs, and implementing solutions with a quiet efficiency that impressed even the seasoned professionals at the Thorne Foundation. She learned about large-scale logistics, ethical investing, and the intricate dance of philanthropy, all while maintaining the grounded perspective she had carried from the diner. Her ability to genuinely listen, to truly see the people behind the statistics, set her apart. She brought a compassionate humanity to every decision, a stark contrast to the often detached, data-driven approach common in such high-stakes environments. One brisk morning, as Alara presented a detailed proposal for a new community outreach program, Arthur Thorne leaned back in his chair, a look of profound satisfaction on his face. "Alara," he began, his voice laced with admiration, "you are truly exceptional. Your insights are invaluable, your dedication unwavering. You are everything I hoped for, and more." He paused, his gaze softening. "In fact, you have already proven your extraordinary judgment." Ilara looked at him, puzzled. "Sir?" she inquired softly. Arthur Thorne smiled, a knowing glint in his eyes. "Do you recall, when we first began discussing your role, I mentioned a discretionary fund? A small budget I entrusted to you, to use as you saw fit, as a sort of initial project, a test of your instincts." Alara nodded slowly, a faint memory stirring. She had indeed been given access to a fund, with very little instruction, a demonstration of his profound trust. "You chose, Alara," he continued, "to allocate a significant portion of that fund to save your brother's wedding." The words hung in the air, a silent, powerful revelation. Alara's eyes widened, a rush of understanding washing over her. She had made the decision quickly, instinctively, driven by a complex mixture of familial obligation, empathy for Liam's public humiliation, and a quiet desire for peace within her own family. She had told no one, had simply sent the instructions to the financial team, knowing it would be executed anonymously. It was an act of profound, selfless love and forgiveness, a quiet intervention born not of a desire for credit, but from a deeper sense of what was right. "You did it quietly, anonymously, mister," Thorne observed, his voice full of respect. "You sought no recognition, no praise. You simply saw a need within your family, a profound distress, and you acted. That, Alara, is the mark of true character. That is precisely why I chose you. You understood that sometimes, the greatest acts of generosity are those that remain unseen, those performed out of pure, unadulterated compassion." Alara felt a wave of emotion wash over her, relief, validation, and a profound sense of purpose. She hadn't done it to gloat, to show Liam how wrong he was. She hadn't done it to prove anything to anyone. She had done it because, despite everything, he was her brother, and the thought of his public downfall had weighed on her. She had given him the very thing he desperately wanted, not out of malice, but out of a quiet, enduring love. It was her ultimate moment of empowerment, not by revealing her power, but by choosing to wield it with grace and anonymity. I just wanted to help, sir," Ilara finally managed, her voice hushed. "It felt like the right thing to do. For the family." Arthur Thorne nodded, his admiration evident. "Indeed, Ilara. And that is precisely the kind of heart we need, leading these initiatives. A heart that acts out of genuine care, not for personal gain or glory." He understood that Alara's silence was not a weakness, but a profound strength. It was a choice to let the act speak for itself, to embody the very principles of selfless giving. Her journey from overlooked waitress to a trusted leader was complete, sealed not by the grandiosity of her new position, but by the quiet, powerful decision she had made to extend grace to the very person who had once denied her worth. The truth, known only to her and Mr. Thorne, hung in the air, a testament to her silent triumph, a victory far more meaningful than any public acclamation. Part 8. The wedding day dawned bright and clear, an auspicious sky greeting Liam's lavish affair. The country club grounds sparkled, the floral arrangements burst with vibrant colors, and the air buzzed with the excited chatter of hundreds of guests. Everything was perfectly orchestrated, precisely as Liam had dreamed, and far grander than he could have ever afforded himself. He moved through the day in a haze of relief and exhilaration, his face plastered with a triumphant smile. He looked impeccable in his tailored tuxedo, his arm wrapped around Chloe, who radiated joy in her exquisite gown. Every detail, from the live string quartet to the gourmet menu, spoke of unparalleled luxury, a stark contrast to the despair he had felt just weeks prior. Yet, beneath the veneer of triumph, Liam felt a subtle, almost imperceptible unease. The near collapse of the wedding, the sheer terror of public humiliation, had shaken him more profoundly than he cared to admit. He was immensely grateful to the anonymous sponsor, whom he privately dubbed his guardian angel, but the experience of being utterly dependent, of being saved by an unseen, unknown hand, left a strange, hollow feeling in his chest. He was the center of attention, but he hadn't truly earned this salvation. He couldn't boast about it, couldn't leverage it. It was simply a gift, unexpected and undeserved. Across the vast, opulent ballroom, a figure stood quietly near a pillar, observing the festivities with a serene expression. It was Alara. She wore a simple, elegant navy blue dress, one she had bought with her first, modest salary from her new role at the Thorn Foundation. She didn't seek attention, didn't join the boisterous conversations. She was merely present, a quiet witness to the culmination of her brother's dreams. Dreams she had quietly, anonymously, resurrected. Liam, in a rare moment of scanning the periphery of the room, caught sight of her. His gaze lingered for a moment, an almost imperceptible flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. He had barely spoken to her since the disastrous brunch, the memory of his public dismissal of her, a faint, uncomfortable prickle at the back of his mind. He saw her standing there, poised and graceful, a quiet island in the sea of his boisterous success. She met his gaze briefly, her own eyes holding a depth he couldn't quite fathom, a knowing, gentle light that seemed to encompass far more than the celebratory clamor around them. There was no resentment, no triumph in her look, only a quiet understanding. It unnerved him slightly, though he couldn't articulate why. As the reception reached its peak, Liam raised a glass, calling for silence. The murmurs died down, and all eyes turned to him. "To Chloe, my beautiful wife," he began, his voice ringing out, "and to all of you, our wonderful family and friends, for sharing this incredible day with us." He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. "And of course," he continued, his voice thick with emotion, "to our anonymous benefactor, to the person, or people, who stepped forward when all hope seemed lost. You are a true beacon of hope, a testament to the boundless generosity that exists in the world." His voice resonated with a genuine, if somewhat self-serving, gratitude. "You saved our day, and for that, we will be eternally grateful. This wedding, this joy, would not have been possible without you." He raised his glass higher, and the room echoed with cheers and applause for the unseen savior. A twinge of guilt, faint but persistent, stirred within Liam. He thought of Alara, of the harsh words he had flung at her that day at brunch. He knew, deep down, that his pursuit of status had sometimes made him unkind, dismissive of those he deemed lesser. He resolved, in that moment of public gratitude, to be a better man, to appreciate the simple kindnesses in life, though he still had no idea of the monumental kindness that had been quietly extended to him. The dramatic irony was palpable, thick enough to touch, yet completely invisible to Liam. The person he had belittled, the quiet woman in the simple dress who was now observing him from the edges of the room, was the very beacon of hope he was praising. She held the truth, a silent, powerful secret that could have shattered his illusion of control. But instead, she chose to let him bask in the glory, knowing that true power lay not in exposure, but in quiet, selfless action. Alara watched him, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips. She felt no need for recognition, no desire to unveil the truth. Her true victory wasn't in proving him wrong, but in simply doing what was right, allowing the ripple effect of her kindness to touch the lives of those she loved, even those who had wronged her. Part 9. The afterglow of the wedding lingered in the family's conversations for weeks. The mysterious benefactor, a recurring topic of awed speculation. Liam, now officially married and back in the swing of his ambitious career, still found himself occasionally pondering the identity of his rescuer. The experience had, subtly, shifted something within him. The brush with financial ruin, the humbling reliance on an unknown entity, had chipped away at some of his arrogance. He was still focused on success, but perhaps less blindly so. One quiet afternoon, he found himself unexpectedly calling Ilara. "Hey, Ilara," he began, his voice uncharacteristically tentative. "Listen, I was just wondering, with your new job, at that foundation, you meet a lot of influential people, right?" Ilara, now navigating complex meetings and managing significant projects with newfound confidence, listened patiently. She knew where this was going. "I do, Liam," she replied calmly, her voice even. "It's a wonderful organization." Right, he hurried on. "So, I was just thinking, maybe, just maybe, you might have some kind of connection to you know, the anonymous sponsor of the wedding?" He still couldn't quite bring himself to openly admit his dependence. He was still trying to find a professional connection, rather than admit to a personal curiosity. Alara simply smiled, a knowing, gentle smile that reached her eyes. It was a smile that held 1,000 unspoken truths, a lifetime of understanding. She didn't confirm, didn't deny, she didn't need to. "Liam," she said softly, her voice carrying a quiet authority he hadn't heard before. "The world is full of good people. Sometimes they act without seeking recognition. Sometimes, their greatest joy is simply in giving." She paused, her gaze steady. "And sometimes the most important connections are the ones we don't always see right in front of us." Her words hung in the air, a soft riddle. Liam frowned slightly, sensing a deeper meaning he couldn't quite grasp, but also sensing a certain finality in her tone. He shrugged, a flicker of irritation mixed with a grudging respect. "Yeah, I guess so," he mumbled, letting the topic drop. He didn't connect the dots, he wouldn't. The notion that his quiet, diner-working sister could have orchestrated such a grand salvation was simply too far beyond the scope of his prejudiced understanding. The family continued to praise the mysterious benefactor, marveling at their generosity. They now spoke of Alara's better job with a new, if still somewhat superficial, appreciation. "Alara's doing well, isn't she?" Their mother would comment, "Working for that big foundation, who knew?" They still didn't fully comprehend the depth of her transformation, or the quiet power she now wielded. But Liam was slowly, imperceptibly, changing. The scare of almost losing the wedding, the unexpected grace of the anonymous gift, had softened some of his sharper edges. He found himself thinking about that Sunday brunch, about the casual cruelty of his words. He saw Ilara thriving, quiet and composed, and something shifted within him. One evening, completely unprompted, he called her again. This time, his voice held a genuine tremor of sincerity. "Ilara," he began, clearing his throat. I I just wanted to say something. About that brunch, months ago. What I said, it wasn't right. It was thoughtless. And I'm sorry." It was an awkward, but sincere, apology, a moment of uncharacteristic humility from him. He didn't know the full truth, but the experience had humbled him enough to recognize his own past unkindness. Alara felt a warmth spread through her. This was the true victory, not the grand wedding, but this small, genuine acknowledgement. "Thank you, Liam," she replied, her voice gentle, accepting his apology with the same grace with which she had performed her silent act of rescue. She didn't press him, didn't reveal her secret. She understood that some truths are best left unspoken, allowing the lessons to unfold in their own time. Her journey had led her to a place of immense influence, not just financially, but spiritually. She was living proof that true power isn't about control or recognition, but about quiet strength, profound empathy, and the enduring grace of unconditional love. A love so deep it could save the very person who once dismissed it. Part 10. Alara's life blossomed. She rose steadily within the Thorn Foundation, becoming not just a leader, but a respected voice in the philanthropic community. She spearheaded initiatives that truly changed lives, always remembering the faces she had served at the daily grind, always ensuring that the dignity of every individual was upheld. Her humility remained, a grounding force amidst the grandeur of her new world. She never forgot where she came from, or the quiet lessons learned in the simple act of pouring coffee. She understood that true worth was an intrinsic quality, not an external validation. The story of Liam's wedding, and her silent role in it, became a private testament to her unwavering character, a powerful secret she carried with grace. She learned that the greatest impact often comes not from proving others wrong, but from simply doing what is right, allowing the quiet power of kindness to speak for itself. Her family, over time, began to see her differently. They still didn't know the full truth, but they witnessed her quiet strength, her burgeoning influence, her unshakable calm. Liam, in particular, continued his slow transformation. He became less consumed by external validation, more reflective, more genuinely appreciative of the people in his life, including Ilara. He might never know the full extent of her generosity, but the kindness he received, albeit anonymously, nudged him towards a more empathetic version of himself. He learned, in his own way, that life's greatest gifts often come from unexpected sources, sometimes even from those you have underestimated the most. This is a story about the unseen strength, the quiet dignity, and the profound impact of those who operate beyond the spotlight. It's about how true value isn't measured in accolades or titles, but in the depths of one's character, in the quiet acts of compassion that echo far beyond their immediate reach. It's about how sometimes the greatest power is found not in speaking your truth, but in embodying it, in allowing your actions to be the silent, undeniable testament to your worth. So, I ask you again, have you ever considered the true measure of a person's worth? What if the person who saves your day, who offers you a lifeline when you least expect it, is the very one you once dismissed, the one you overlooked, the one whose quiet presence faded into the background? What if their greatest strength lies not in proving you wrong, but in simply doing what is right, without a need for applause or recognition? Look closely at the people around you today. The quiet ones, the ones in the background, the ones performing what seems like insignificant tasks. Understand that every single person holds a universe of potential, a reservoir of untold kindness. Share this story, not just as a tale of triumph, but as a gentle reminder. Remind someone today that kindness is a currency that never depreciates, empathy is a language everyone understands, and true heroes often wear no capes, no grand titles, but simply a humble heart and an unwavering spirit. Their greatest strength is often their silence, their greatest victory, an act of selfless grace.